Before we begin, imagine this. You've been walking for hours through a cold, misty medieval forest. You can't see more than a few feet ahead. Your cloak is soaked. The storm is closing in. And just when you think the night might swallow the road entirely, a single lantern appears through the fog. Beat. Warm fire sound fades in. That lantern leads to the Wayfarer's Hall, a place where travelers were kept safe from storms, loneliness, and the long, dangerous road. Tonight, I'll take you inside. Welcome, dear traveler, to Sleeping Historian, your quiet corner of the internet, where history becomes gentle, comforting company for the night. Tonight, we step into a warm lantern glow, tucked deep along an old medieval road, a place where weary travelers gathered, storms passed harmlessly outside, and a humble keeper watched over every resting soul. So, settle in, pull up your blanket, and if you haven't already, kindly tap subscribe. Give this video a soft like, and let me know in the comments where you're listening from tonight. As always, when the story ends, the relaxing music will continue playing softly so you can drift peacefully into sleep. The road had been quiet for hours, quiet, in that deep, padded way that only misty evenings can create. When the world seems wrapped in soft wool, and every sound is blurred at the edges. What began as a gentle haze had become a rolling sea of fog, drifting and folding over itself like great pale waves. Each footstep pressed into the damp earth with a muted crunch, and your breath curled in the air, vanishing into the silver-gray veil, drifting a few inches above the ground. It was the kind of evening when the world felt older, when even your thoughts seemed to move more slowly, as though dusted with sleep. The sky had long since swallowed the sun, leaving behind a dim, blue-tinted afterglow that barely touched the treetops. The birds had fallen silent. The wind had quieted. Only the rhythmic whisper of your footsteps kept you company on the winding forest road. You pull your cloak closer around your shoulders. The fabric is heavy with gathered mist, smelling faintly of wool, pine resin, and the long miles already behind you. Somewhere far off, a single crow calls out once, then is swallowed by the fog. Even the familiar twinge of travel-worn muscles begins to soften, replaced by a drowsy sense of drifting, as though the road itself were gently guiding you forward. You are alone yet not lonely. There is something comforting in this quiet stretch of the world, something ancient and gentle that seems to settle into your bones. You feel as though you're re-walking through the memory of a place rather than the place itself. But then, just as your legs begin to grow heavier and the cool damp of evening settles deeper into your sleeves, something changes. First, it is only a faint glimmer so. Soft it might have been your imagination. A tiny pulse of gold, barely visible through a cluster of mist, flickers and fades. Then it appears again, warmer this time. Steadier. You stop. For a moment, the world holds completely still. A breeze, soft as a sigh, tugs at the edge of your hood. The glow continues, unwavering now, like the heartbeat of something patient and welcoming. A lantern, somewhere ahead, beyond the bend of the road and the curtain of fog. Someone has lit a lantern and hung it high enough for travelers to see. Your tired steps grow a little lighter. There is a certain kind of hope that lanterns bring, especially to those who travel alone through darkening forests. Lanterns mean warmth, company, shelter. They mean that someone has chosen to tend a flame not for themselves alone, but for any soul who might be wandering the road at dusk. You follow the glow. The forest thins, the trees pulling back like silent sentinels on either side of the path. Their branches drip with moisture, the droplets reflecting tiny shards of lantern light as you pass. The fog begins to soften around the edges, curling away from the warmth ahead. And then, as you round the final bend of the road, you see it fully for the first time. A lonely building, old, sturdy, and glowing like an ember in the night. The Wayfarer's Hall. Its weathered timbers lean inward, with a familiar sag of long-lived structures, the kind shaped by centuries of use, storms, and quiet nights like this one. Moss clings to its stone foundation, softened by time. The thatched roof glistens faintly with moisture. Beneath the eaves, the golden lantern sways gently from a crooked iron hook, casting long ripples of light through the fog. Even from area you can hear the deep, steady crackle of a fire inside. Faint voices drift through the woodlow, unhurried, more like murmured stories than loud conversation. The building does not roar with the chaos of a tavern, nor ring with the bustle of an inn. It hums quietly, warmly with the soft presence of weary travelers. You step closer. The hall stands slightly raised on stone footings, its wooden door rounded at the top in the old way, fitted with iron hinges shaped like curling vines. A sliver of warm light leaks through the small gap beneath the frame. You notice sets of footprints in the earth fresh enough to gleam darker than the surrounding ground. Travelers have arrived recently. Others still tuck their horses under the shelter out back. As you approach the door, the lantern turns slowly on its hook, carried by the gentlest breeze. Its flame flutters once more bright enough to illuminate the sign just above the door. A carved wooden marker, edges worn smooth by years of storm and sun. Upon it is etched a simple symbol, a small house with a path leading toward it, and a single glowing dot above the door. A welcome, a promise, a place where the road ends for the night. You pause a moment longer before entering, letting the warmth seep into your eyes, letting your breath settle from the rhythm of travel. In the stillness, you can almost imagine the generations of travelers before you who paused in this very spot. Soldiers returning home, merchants with weary horses, pilgrims braving wind and rain, herbalists carrying their precious plants carefully wrapped in cloth, all of them stopping here. All of them taking a breath, all of them stepping inside. You let your hand rest briefly on the wood of the door. It's warmed not just by the fire inside, but by the presence of people, laughter softened by time, stories shared at low volume, the heat of long nights and longer histories held within these walls. You push gently. The door opens with the soft grown-old hinges. Old friends and warm air spills out across your face. It smells of burning oak, damp wool drying by the fire, and a hint of something herbal simmering in a pot. And then you step inside. The warmth envelopes you instantly. The fire, large, steady, and deeply comforting, casts a golden glow across the hall. Wooden beams stretch overhead like protective arms. Lanterns hang from iron hooks along the walls, and the muted murmur of voices drifts like soft waves, rising and falling without urgency. A dozen travelers sit scattered about the space, some near the hearth, some at small wooden tables, some resting near the walls, with cloaks still wrapped around their shoulders. None look up with suspicion or alarm. Instead, a few offer small nods, a greeting reserved for fellow wanderers who understand the silence of long roads. But it is the figure near the hearth that holds your attention. Someone sits there with a ledger open on their lapholder.com, with an expression of quiet understanding etched into the lines around their eyes. They glance up just as you enter, offering a gentle smile that seems to say, "You've arrived. You're safe. The night is long, but here you can rest." For the first time all day, your shoulders loosen. Your breath sinks deeper. Your heartbeat finds a slower rhythm. The world outside is swallowed by fog, but inside, in this old hall, the night grows warm and still, and your journey, just for now, has found its pause. The door eases shut behind you with a soft thud, and for a moment, the outside world becomes nothing more than a thin memory fog trapped on the other side of wooden planks. The Wayfarer's hall settles around you like a thick, warm blanket, the kind someone tucks gently around your shoulders after a long, tiring day. The hum of low voices, the steady heartbeat of the fire, and the faint aroma of bread warming near the hearth all meet you at once, easing the stiffness from your limbs. The room feels deeper than it first appears, shaped not by walls alone, but by the presence of the travelers inside. Shadows stretch softly along the floorboards, pooling beneath tables and chairs like still water. Every sound seems softened as, though the hall itself has learned to cradle noise the same way it cradles people. Your boots tread on the worn planks with a muffled rhythm, their old boards smoothed by the passing of countless feet. Some creak gently under your steps, Others remain silent, as though they've long grown accustomed to visitors drifting across them. The wood is warm where the fire's glow reaches, and cool where the shadows linger. And as you move further inside, you notice how the hall is built like a story layered over generations. Nothing is perfect. Everything is deeply lived in. The beams above are thick, crafted from ancient timber, polished by smoke and time. They bow slightly in places just enough to show their age without surrendering their strength. From certain angles you can make out old carvings etched into them. Spirals, initials, symbols whose meanings have likely been lost for centuries. Travelers have left their marks here not with possession, but as quiet testimony to their passing. The walls carry their own story. Stone near the base, cool and soft-edged, transitions into wood that has darkened over time. You see faint lines where repairs were made long ago. Patch where a section of timber cracked in a storm. Another where someone has carefully sanded out burn marks from an errant candle. Every imperfection feels intentional, as though the hall has chosen to keep its history visible rather than hide it. A soft warmth touches the side of your face as you pass by the hearth. The fire crackles in a deep stone cradle, its flames licking at thick logs that burn slow and steady. Sparks rise occasionally, glowing for a brief heartbeat before fading into the air. A sturdy iron pot hangs over the coals, steam curling from its rim as something hearty simmers within. The smell earthy, herbal, comforting fills the hall with the sense of a home you've never been to, yet somehow remember. The travelers gathered near the hearth shift slightly as you pass. None greet you with boisterous welcome or wary stares. Instead, each offers a small, subtle acknowledgement, a nod, a faint smile, the brief raising of an eyebrow. It is the silent language of those who have walked long roads. Welcome, friend. You're one of us. You slow your steps, allowing your eyes to adjust to the interplay of firelight and shadow. The light flickers over faces tired but serene, marked by journeys that have weathered them rather than worn them down. In one corner, a cloaked figure sits polishing a small wooden flute. The fire's glow gleams off the polished wood as they turn it gently in their hands. Near the far wall, a young couple shares a quiet conversation over steaming cups, their voices barely above whispers. Everything in the room seems to hum with a steady rhythm, as if all breath and motion is synchronized into a single, calming pulse. You step toward one of the tables, its surface bowed gently with age. The edges are rounded from years of elbows resting on it, mugs set down with varying degrees of care, and maps unfurled by weary hands seeking direction. The wood smells faintly of something sweet, perhaps mead spilled decades ago and absorbed into the grain. As you brush your fingertips lightly across its surface, you feel the warmth stored within it, the way old would never quite cools in a place like this. Near the back of the hall stands a shelf filled with an assortment of objects that seem to belong nowhere else. A cracked ceramic bowl too beautiful to throw away, a chipped lantern with only one remaining. Panel of glass, a stack of folded cloths in muted shades of green and brown, and a handful of books thick with hand-copied pages. These items don't match one another, yet together they create a sense of gentle orderist, though every stray, forgotten thing in the world eventually finds its way here. As you explore with your eyes, a slight shift in the room's energy draws your attention to the hearth again. The keeper of the hall de calm figure you noticed upon entering closes their ledger and stands slowly. The light touches their face fully for the first time, revealing lines shaped more by kindness than by age. The hair is tied back loosely, streaked with silver, and their clothes are practical but well cared for. They step forward with measured, quiet movements, as if they've learned to walk in rhythm with the hall itself. Their expression is neither questioning nor demanding, yet simply welcomes. When they speak, their voice is low and warm, like the first sip of something hot after a cold journey. "Long road tonight?" they ask, though not with the expectation of an answer. It's a question asked more out of understanding than curiosity. They've likely seen the look in your eyes 1,000 times. The mixture of fatigue, relief, and something softer perhaps. Gratitude. You offer a small nod, and the keeper smiles gently. "You'll find warmth here," they say, "and rest, if that's what you seek." You feel the truth in their voice, not a promise, but a simple fact. They gestured toward the hearth. "Sit where you like." The pot's been simmering since afternoon. There'll be bread shortly. Their tone settles into your chest like a warm weight. You know immediately that this is not a place where you must hurry, or explain, or brace yourself. The hall requires nothing from you except presence. As the keeper returns to their seat by the fire, one of the travelers, an older woman with silver-streaked braids, shifts on her stool and gives you a small smile. She pats the stool beside her with a gentle tap of her hand. The invitation is subtle but sincere. You move to sit, the heat of the fire brushing against your shins. The stool creaks softly under your weight, and as you settle in, you feel the subtle ache in your legs begin to melt away. The warmth wraps around you, not just from the fire, but from the quiet companionship of those around you. The road is behind you. The night is long and calm, and the threshold you crossed has carried you into a place where time moves differently, slow, gentle, steady. A place where, simply by being here, you belong. The keeper does not rise immediately, nor do they hurry when they finally stand, because nothing in the Wayfarer's hall moves quickly unless it must. Everything here is paced like an exhale, long and slow, as though the building itself encourages patience. You notice this again as the keeper approaches. The gentle sway of their heavy woolen sleeves, the soft shuffle of careful steps on aged wooden floorboards, the quiet intention behind each motion. They carry no weapon, no staff, nothing that marks them as an authority figure in the way a guard or innkeeper might. But the hall seems to shape itself around their presence, leaning in, listening, steadying. Their role is something older, quieter, and more rooted. When they reach your side, they bow their heads slightly, the motion simple but respectful. "You've brought the road with you," they say, their voice low and warm. Not accusing, not prying, just observing like someone who has spent decades learning to read people the way others read. Weather terrain, their eyes, a soft shade somewhere between ash and warm amber, carry stories of their own. You can tell, even without asking, that this person has stood at countless thresholds, greeting wanderers from every direction of the compass, some joyful, some wounded, some eager, some afraid, and some simply tired down to the marrow. You open your mouth to speak, perhaps to offer thanks or explanation, but the keeper gently raises a hand, halting your words with a kindness that surprises you. "There is no need to recount the day," they murmur. "Not until you choose to. Here, arrival is enough." With that, they gesture toward the hearth, where several travelers sit in soft semicircle, their faces illuminated with the golden hues of firelight. The keeper motions to an empty seat, and as you settle once more into the warmth, they drift away to retrieve something. When they return, they carry a small bundle wrapped in linen on, almost ceremonial gesture, handled with reverence rather than routine. They set it on the table in front of you and unfold it carefully, revealing a wooden cup, polished smooth with age and use. "This is yours for the night," they explain. "Every traveler who stays receives one." You look at the cup. Its rim bears faint marks from past hands, the grain of the wood spiraling inward like a tiny, quiet whirlpool. It fits perfectly in your palm, as though carved to match the curve of your fingers. You sense it has belonged to many before you, each leaving behind a whisper of warmth. The keeper smiles softly at your quiet appreciation. "Some halls give keys," they say, "some give tokens. We give cups, a reminder that rest is meant to be shared divan in silence." You hold it closer, feeling the faint heat absorbed from the keeper's hands. "Keys are for locking things away," the keeper continues. "But cups. 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 Invite." They welcome. They gather warmth. They remember touch. You nod, and something inside you loosens a tension you didn't even realize you were carrying. The keeper straightens slowly, as though aligning themselves with some unseen rhythm in the hall. "If you wish, I'll bring you a measure of warm cider. It helps quiet the road from your bones." You offer a grateful nod, and they return to the hearth's side, where a clay jug rests near the simmering pot. As they prepare the drink, you watch them more closely, not out of suspicion, but curiosity, perhaps even admiration. Every movement they make is purposeful, unhurried, grounded. They carry themselves with the quiet authority of someone who knows exactly who they are and what role they play in the world. A caretaker, yes, but not merely of a building. They tend something much more fragile. The hearts of travelers who come here with burdens too heavy to carry alone. A soft sound draws your gaze to the corner, to your right. There, on a small wooden hook next to the stairs, hangs an object you hadn't noticed before, a ring of keys, old but well kept. Their shapes vary, some slender and ornate, others heavy and practical. They look ancient, their handles worn smooth by years of turning locks that may no longer exist. The keys, you ask quietly as the keeper returns with your cup now filled. They set the drink before you, steam rising in gentle swirls. "Ah," they say, following your gaze. "Yes, the oldest part of the hall." You tilt your head, in beading more. The keeper draws a stool closer and sits beside you, folding their hands over their knees. For a moment, they simply watch the fire, letting the memories settle in before they speak. Long ago, they begin. This place wasn't a hole at all. It was a crossroads shelter, just for walls and a roof, a place where travelers could take refuge from storms. The keeper back, then my ancestor carried keys to other doors along the road, doors to storehouses, way stations, and shelters scattered for miles. Their fingers traced the rim of their own cup thoughtfully. Travelers would come seeking passage or supplies, and the keeper would choose which key they needed. Not always the one they thought, but always the right one. You imagined the grass-covered landscape centuries ago, lonely paths crossing under wide, star-filled skies. Travelers arriving exhausted, seeking not just food or warmth, but direction. And now, you ask? The keeper breathes softly. Now the doors those keys belong to are gone. Some buried by time, some replaced by homes or fields or forgotten entirely. But the keys remain, a reminder of the responsibility we carry. Their voice softens further, almost a whisper. People still come needing things they don't know how to ask for. Rest, quiet, a listening ear, a place where no one demands their story before they're ready to tell it. Their gaze returns to you. Gentle, steady, and I suppose they add with a small smile, I am still a keeper, not of doors anymore, but of moments. The warmth from the cider reaches your hands, then your chest, loosening you further. You take a sip. It is sweet with apples, faintly spiced, and thoroughly calming, almost as though it was brewed with the very intention of soothing travelers. Around you, the hall carries on its soft rhythms. A log settles in the fire with a quiet crack. Someone shifts their cloak near the wall. The low murmur of distant voices rises and falls like the tide. Everything feels deeply connected, woven, not by chaos or noise, but by presence. The keeper rises, laying a gentle hand on your shoulder. Brief, grounding, warm. Rest where you like, they say. No door here is locked, and no story is required before its time. Then, with the same unhurried grace as before, they move back to their place near the fire, reopening their ledger with careful hands. You exhale, long and slow. You now understand why the hole feels the way it is: safe, tranquil, almost sacred. It is not the walls that make it so. It is the keeper. And tonight, they will watch over your rest. The fire in the Wayfarer's hole burns with a slow, steady rhythm, its flames curling upward like gentle fingers tracing the air. As you settle deeper into your seat, the warmth extends through the soles of your boots and into your bones, easing aches you hadn't noticed were still hiding in your muscles. The hole glows golden, and the faces around the hearth take on a softness that makes everyone look a little kinder, a little more familiar. This is when you begin to notice the others, those strangers who, like you, have wandered far enough to seek solace here. They sit in small clusters or solitary quiet, yet every one of them seems woven into the atmosphere of the hall as naturally as the old beams or stone hearth. The first to catch your attention is the merchant. He sits closest to the fire, his heavy cloak draped over the back of his chair to dry, faint plumes of steam rising from its hem. His clothing is practical, but well-made earthy colors, sturdy stitching. The faint sheen of someone who has spent years bargaining in markets from one end of the land to the other. His hands are broad, fingers slightly ink-stained, as though he takes careful notes, even on the road. He's polishing a handful of coins slowly, methodically, astacteri, not just pieces of metal, but little stories he carries with him. The firelight dances across the curved surfaces, revealing etchings of kings, crests, and cities you've never heard of. With each coin he turns, there is a sense that he is reflecting on the places they came from just as much as the value they hold. Every so often he glances at the door, not nervously, but with the habit of one who travels dangerous routes. Then he catches your gaze, offers a small, tired smile, and lowers his eyes again. A man accustomed to carrying secrets and stories both, but too weary tonight to guard them tightly. A seat away from him sits a different sort of traveler. Entirely a soldier, not in armor, not even in full uniform. Instead, he wears a simple tunic reinforced at the shoulders, a cloak frayed at the edges, and boots that look as though they carried him through more years than any pair of boots should. His posture is relaxed, though his back never fully rests against the chair. There's a carefulness in the way he holds himself steady, quiet, aware. A long scar runs along his jawline, softened by time but unmistakably the kind that comes from steel, not accident. His eyes, however, are gentle, surprisingly so. They track the fire the way a wanderer watches the sea. With longing, with memory, with a quiet ache, he's learned to live alongside. He cradles a cup of the keeper's warm cider between his hands, turning it slowly, as though absorbing its heat. At one point, he shifts, tugging a small wooden token from his pocket, a charm shaped like a star. Edges smoothed by years of handling, he holds it briefly, presses it between his palms, and then tucks it away again. A ritual, perhaps, a reminder of someone far away. He doesn't speak, but the silence around him feels dignified, not lonely, not closed off, just peaceful in its own worn-out way. To your left, at a smaller table beneath a window clouded with condensed mist, sits a woman with long braids, threaded with sprigs of dried herbs. The herbalist. Her clothing carries the scent of forest morning's pine resin, damp moss, a hint of lavender crushed underfoot. A satchel rests at her feet, filled to the brim with small jars and bottles, each sealed with wax or cloth. A few branches poke out, wrapped carefully in linen to protect their berries or blossoms. She moves gracefully, her fingers nimble as she unwraps a small pouch and rubs something between her palms, a bit of leaf. Perhaps. She lifts her hands to her nose, inhaling deeply, then closes her eyes in a moment of quiet reflection. There is a calmness to her that feels almost monk-like, as though she draws strength from the earth itself. Occasionally, she glances toward the keeper with a soft nod, as though the two share a wordless understanding. Perhaps she has visited before, or perhaps their paths have crossed on some old, forgotten trail where travelers meet not as strangers but as temporary companions, carried by the same wind. She catches you watching and offers a knowing, gentle smile, a smile that feels like someone brushing dust from your shoulders. She doesn't speak, but her eyes say enough. You're safe. Rest is era. Near the far walls sit a pilgrimza. Young Peru's clothing is simple but travel-worn, marked with small embroidered symbols of the shrine they journey toward. Their cloaks are patched, their boots mud-splattered, yet they seem content enough, leaning close to share a hushed conversation punctuated by soft laughter. One holds a small wooden box, carved with intricate patterns, something clearly precious. The other lifts a bundle wrapped in cloth and reveals a loaf of bread neven, handmade, perhaps offered to them earlier by someone grateful for their prayers. They break it in half, sharing a quiet meal. Their voices blend with a fire's crackle, forming a soothing background melody. Even without hearing the words, you can sense the hope woven through their journey, a different kind of burden from the others, but a burden nonetheless. The hall holds travelers like these. It softens sharp edges, soothes weary hearts. It asks nothing, offers everything quietly. As your gaze drifts, you notice a figure sitting alone near the back, half shadowed by the beams overhead. A tall man with a hood drawn low, his face hard to see. Yet nothing about him feels threatening. He sits with hands folded, breathing steadily, as though lost in deep contemplation. Perhaps he arrived earlier. Perhaps he prefers stillness to conversation. The hall accommodates that. To every traveler, finding a corner that fits their mood. In another corner, two older women mend a cloak together, their needles catching the firelight like tiny sparks. Their quiet companionship feels as warm as the hearth. They speak occasionally in soft tones, exchanging stories that bring gentle smiles to their faces. All these travelers so different, so quieter. The same refuge tonight. Each carries a different past, a different hope, a different weight, and yet the whole folds them together seamlessly, like threads in a well-worn blanket. You feel it again, that curious sensation that the building itself is alive, breathing, listening. The keeper watches over everyone with the gentle ease of someone tending a garden. The fire burns, as though it recognizes each person by name. The walls seem to lean in, offering privacy in the midst of closeness. In this gathering of strangers, you feel no distance at all, only warmth, only belonging. As the fire crackles and the whole glows softly around you, you realize something simple and profound. These strangers, each wrapped in their own silence, have become part of your night's journey, part of the story that will carry you gently towards sleep. The fire settles into a low, steady glow, the kind that speaks of long-burning logs and the patient art of tending flames. Its warmth radiates outward in slow waves that seem to soften every edge in the room. Around it, the travelers shift into more relaxed positions, loosening boots, stretching legs, drawing cloaks more comfortably over their shoulders. It is then that you begin to notice the scent that has been lingering gently in the air since your arrival. It's subtle at first, herbal, earthy, warm. But as the minutes pass, the aroma deepens, layered and inviting. It curls between the beams and along the tables before drifting your way, and your stomach responds with a soft, undeniable tug. A meal is simmering. Not just any meal, but the kind that takes time, hours, perhaps even days to coax into flavor. The air vibrates slightly with the promise of it. There's a steadiness to the smell, a sense of familiarity, as though generations of hands have stirred that same pot, added to it, tasted it, adjusted it, and passed it forward again. Your eyes drift to the hearth, where the keeper tends a large iron pot suspended from a sturdy beam. The pot is ancient, its surface mottled with the dark patina only age and constant use can create. A gentle steam rises from it, glowing almost silver in the firelight. The keeper lifts the lid with practiced care, letting a soft cloud of fragrant warmth billow into the air. Every traveler in the room seems to breathe a little deeper in that moment, their shoulders easing, their expressions softening. The smell is not sharp or overpowering. It is soothing, like the memory of a childhood meal long forgotten until this very instant. The keeper stirs the content with a wooden ladle, moving through the pot's depths, slowly, thoughtfully. The movement is rhythmic, almost meditative. The sound of the ladle brushing against the pot's edges is soft, rounded, comforting in its repetition. This pot has been cooking since yesterday, they say quietly, as though sharing a secret with the room. And yesterday's pot had been cooking since the day before. The soldiers near the fire nod knowingly. The herbalist closes her eyes and inhales with subtle gratitude. Even the quiet man in the far corner shifts slightly, the scent coaxing him a little further out of shadow. You realize now what this is. A perpetual meal. A hearth that never sleeps. A pot that holds not just food, but continuity, a link from today to yesterday, from one traveler to the next. The keeper dips the ladle once more and lifts it toward their lips, blowing gently before tasting. They hum in satisfaction, nearly ready. They glance toward a small alcove, where a tray of round, golden brown loaves sits wrapped in cloth, and the bread is warm. Bread. You hadn't noticed it before, tucked away beneath its covering, but now the scent of tea, comforting, edged with a hint of honey joins. The aroma of the stew-like melody, finding harmony. The keeper sets the ladle down and lifts one of the loaves with both hands, checking the bottom with a nod of approval. The crust crackles faintly beneath their touch. It's the kind of bread made not for show, but for nourishment. Simple, hearty, filled with warmth. As the keeper slices it, the crackling sound mingles with the fire. Soft crumbs fall to the wooden board, catching the orange glow of the flames. A few travelers instinctively sit forward, not greedily, but expectantly, like people grateful for the comfort of a shared meal. The herbalist rises first, stepping toward the hearth with a respectful bow of her head. The keeper hands her a wooden bowl, hand-carved, smooth at the edges, filled with a generous serving from the pot. The contents are thick and rustic, a blend of grains, vegetables, and tender pieces of root simmered into something that feels almost ancient. You watch as she carries the bowl back to her table, steam rising gently. She holds it in both hands before taking the first spoonful, savoring it with a slow exhale that seems to release a week's worth of tension. Then the merchant approaches. He receives his portion with gratitude, evident in the slight dip of his shoulders. When he sits, he places a slice of bread carefully beside his bowl, as though arranging a small ritual. The soldier is asked next, and though he moves with disciplined restraint, there's a softness in his eyes when he accepts the bowl. He murmurs a quiet word of thanks as, though speaking too loudly might break the spell. The pilgrims share their portion, each tearing a piece of bread to dip into the hearty broth. They laugh softly when the bread drinks in more liquid than expected, leaving their fingertips warm and damp. You wait your turn, partly out of courtesy, partly because it feels right to let others receive first. When the keeper finally turns to you, their smile carries a gentle warmth that feels as nourishing as the meal itself. For the road you've walked, they say, handing you a bowl filled nearly to the brim, and the rest you've earned. The first sip is a revelation. It tastes of home even, if you're not sure where home truly is. It tastes of patience, of slow hours, tended carefully. The flavors are layered yet simple, as though crafted with intention rather than artistry. There are hints of barley, soft, melt in near mouth, vegetables, tender herbs, that taste of forests, and something faintly sweet perhaps, dried apples or honey added near the end. The bread is soft inside and firm outside, perfect for dipping. It absorbs the broth in a way that makes each bite rich and comforting. You eat slowly, savoring each mouthful, letting warmth spread from your stomach outward in concentric waves. Something in your chest loosens again, deeper this time, almost imperceptible. Around you, the whole changes subtly. Conversation softens further. Smiles appear. Two travelers exchanged quiet stories, sparked by the comfort of the meal. The soldier, eyes half-lidded, leans back in his chair with a rare expression of peace. A shared meal does this bind strangers, not through words, but through warmth. It is one of the oldest forms of connection, older even than stories, older than roads, older than walls built to shelter travelers. It is one of the few things that crosses every boundary. Class, distance, age, purpose. The keeper watches from the hearth, satisfaction radiating from their calm posture. They are not hungry. Their nourishment comes from the ease settling through the room. When you finish, you set your wooden cup and bowl aside, and a deep sense of contentment settles into your limbs. For a moment, there is nothing but soft firelight and full stomachs. No urgency, no demands, just warmth shared among wanderers. It is in this stillness that you understand why the hall has stood for so many decades. Why travelers speak of it in quiet admiration. It is not just a place to rest. It is a place to be cared for. Gently, unhurriedly, completely. And as the fire settles lower, the hall's warmth holds all of you like an embrace. After the warmth of the meal settles into your limbs, the hall shifts into a quieter rhythm. The fire continues its steady glow, but now its crackles seem softer, as if they too have grown sleepy after supper. The travelers stretch, lean back, adjust their cloaks, and settle deeper into their seats, not with the sharp movements of people preparing to leave, but with the slow, melting ease of those who know the night is no longer something to endure, but something to rest within. It is in this gentle hum of after-meal contentment that you notice something else. The sound of wood scraping lightly against wood, the faint clatter of small carved objects, and a ripple of soft laughter drifting from a table near the center of the hall. Games, but not the loud, risky, Adrenaline-stirring games you might expect in a tavern crowded with strangers. No dice slamming against tables. No shouts of triumph or curses of loss. These are games played slowly, carefully, and more for companionship than competition. The first game you notice is played by the merchant and the soldier. A simple board sits between them, carved from a single piece of dark wood. The markings are faint from years of use, and the PC's small tokens shaped like stones or small wooden discs bear the gentle polish that only countless hands can give. The merchant moves a piece forward with deliberate care, then leans back and folds his arms with a soft smile. The soldier studies the board, eyes calm, expression unreadable, save for a hint of amusement at the corner of his mouth. He reaches out, pauses for a moment, then slides one of his own pieces in a countering move that draws a quiet chuckle from the merchant. "You always do that," the merchant murmurs, lifting a brow. "Every single time." The soldier shrugs lightly, the closest he comes to a playful smile. "Then you should know better by now." They continue in silence, not tense, not urgent, just the slow, meditative back and forth of two men who have played this game many times before, perhaps not together, but with countless others along the road. You realize that in this moment, they are no longer a merchant and a soldier. They are simply two travelers sharing the comfort of a familiar pattern on a quiet night. Nearby, the herbalist sits with the two older women who were mending the cloak earlier. Between them rests a cloth spread neatly across the table, and on it lies a scattering of small round stones, each one painted with a symbol. A leaf, a moon, a river, a star, a tiny bird, a winding path. The herbalist draws a stone from the pile, places it gently onto the cloth, and hums in consideration. "A river crossing," she muses softly. "Tricky, but not impossible." One of the older women taps her stone thoughtfully. "But only if the moon favors you." The other chuckles. "The moon doesn't favor anyone tonight, I'm afraid." She's hidden behind all that fog. There is no competition. Here just interpretation, storytelling, and gentle teasing. Each stone shapes a tiny narrative, and together they weave an improvised path through an imagined world. It is a game less about winning and more about conjuring slow-moving dreams together. Across the hall, the pilgrim pair giggles quietly over a set of wooden sticks. They toss them lightly onto the table, each stick carved with a small notch on one side. Their game seems to involve counting, pattern-making, or perhaps even fortune. What a berry tease. They find endless delight in the results, nudging each other with soft laughter that never disturbs the room's tranquility. Someone hums a melody in the corner, soft and tuneless, more like a whispered breath than a song. It drifts through the hole like a feather on warm air, blending with the flicker of firelight. And you, curious.com, quietly warmed by everything happening around you, lean forward to observe a table you hadn't noticed before. At that table, the keeper sits. They hold a small wooden box shaped like a square with etched patterns along its edges. The lid is open, revealing a set of delicate pieces carved from bone-smooth, ivory-like tokens, each marked with a small symbol. There is a serenity in the way they handle the pieces, moving them gently, almost meditatively. Their game partner, the man in the shadows, the one who had been sitting alone earlier, now, with the soft glow of lantern light near the keeper, you can see more of him. He has weathered features but calm eyes, and though he still carries an air of solitude, he no longer feels distant. There is a familiarity between him and the keeper, one that stretches beyond the room's usual quiet. He picks up a token, studies it, then places it onto the board. The keeper responds with a small nod of approval, moving one of their own pieces to mirror his. No words pass between them. It is the kind of game that thrives on silence. You watch as the keeper glances up and notices you observing. Their eyes carry a warm glimmer, a soft invitation. "Would you like to join?" They ask, not to pull you into competition, but into calm, shared rhythm. Before you can respond, the merchant calls softly over his shoulder. "Careful," he warns, with a chuckle. "The keeper wins most games." The soldier snorts. "Only because they convince everyone else they're winning." The keeper simply smiles, the kind of smile that seems to hold years of patience and perhaps a secret or two. You shake your head gently and offer a quiet smile of your own, not quite ready to join, but content to remain an observer. The keeper gives another small nod of understanding, returning their attention to the game. Around you, The hall glows with the gentle harmony of slow games played without urgency. There is a magic in it, nothing dramatic, nothing extraordinary, but something comforting in its simplicity. These are the kinds of games best played at the end of long days, the kind that don't demand sharp thinking but instead encourage soft smiles, steady breaths, and the relaxing of tired muscles. A faint bubbling sound rises from the hearth as the perpetual pot resumes its quiet simmer. The travelers breathe in unison with the room, filling the hall with a collective sense of ease. The soldier leans back, stretching his legs with a contented sigh. The herbalist draws another stone and grins at the symbol. The pilgrims giggle over their sticks, one pretending to scold, the other for an unlucky toss. The keeper and their companion continue their quiet games without stakes. This is the way travelers unwind, not through noise or frenzy, but through the slow settling of hearts. As the firelight flickers across the walls, you find yourself drifting not to sleep yet, but toward a deeper state of relaxation. The hall's energy wraps around you like a thick quilt. You can almost feel the games weaving themselves into the quiet rhythm of your breathing. For now, the road outside is forgotten. Time has loosened its hold, and the night stretches, long and peaceful, before you. As the last of the evening's games slow to a gentle close, the hall settles into a deeper kind of quiet, one that feels less like silence, and more like the shared exhale of many tired souls. The fire burns lower now, its flames shrinking into round, glowing embers. Their light paints the wooden beams and stone hearth in warm, reddish hues, casting shadows that sway like branches in a soft breeze. It is, in this hushed moment when conversation fades into murmurs, and the warmth of the meal settles in your core, that another sound begins to rise, soft, tentative at first, like the brushing of fingertips across silk, a single note. It rings from the far corner of the hall, clear and trembling, a quiet thread of sound that slips delicately through the dim air. It's not loud enough to startle, nor sharp enough to break the hush. Instead, it fits itself into the stillness, like something that was always meant to be there. All eyes shift gently toward the sound. There, seated on a small stool, tucked just beneath a lantern's soft glow, is the cloaked traveler you noticed earlier, one who'd been polishing a wooden flute when you first arrived. The cloak has been pushed back now, revealing a face lined not with hardship, but with the kind of serenity found in those who understand the language of music more than the language of words. The traveler lifts the flute again, breathes in deeply, and releases another note, this one flowing into the first like water trickling through a quiet stream. The melody is simple, almost childlike in its gentleness. A rising note, a falling one, a slight pause, like a heartbeat. Then a return, soft and fluid. It is not a song meant to entertain. It is meant to soothe. The herbalist closes her eyes, leaning back in her chair as though settling into the music's embrace. The soldier relaxes further, eyelids drooping, his hand still resting on the wooden token he took from his cloak earlier. The merchant places his game pieces aside, folding his hands in his lap and leaning forward to listen. The keeper watches from their seat near the hearth, their expression warm and knowing. They've heard this before, it seems perhaps many times, from many travelers with many different instruments, but tonight's melody brings a faint glimmer to their eyes, as though this tune holds a memory of its own. The flute continues, weaving a soft tapestry of sound through the hall. Each note seems to float in the air longer than it should, lingering like the last light of dusk just before it fades. The melody shifts and sways, not with dramatic swings, but with the calm trust of someone who knows the music will go where it needs to go. It reminds you of many things at once. The hush of early morning when the world is not yet fully risen. The quiet moments before sleep, when thoughts drift like clouds. The soft lullaby parents once hummed by firelight to restless children. A memory of a meadow, or a slow-moving river, or a lantern flickering in the fog. Not a specific memory, just the feeling of one. The flute's notes slip into the beams of the ceiling, gathering in the spaces between the planks as gently as dust motes, settling at dawn. They glide along the cool stone floor. They sway with the shadows on the walls. They warm the air in a way the fire alone cannot. As the melody continues, something changes in the hall, not in sound, but in the way the travelers hold themselves. The older women set their needlework aside, hands resting peacefully in their laps. One of them hums softly along, her voice trembling but warm. The pilgrims lean against one another, their breaths syncing with the rhythm. Even the quiet man in the shadows bows his head, as though listening to something far older than the tune itself. The music grows, richer not louder, just more present, more filled with the softness of human experience, more laden with the weight of shared quiet. The melody shifts into a minor key for a moment, a note that feels like longing, or memory, or the ache that accompanies distant dreams. But it doesn't linger there. It rises gently back to warmth, like a hand brushing reassurance across a friend's shoulder. Your own breath slows. Your heartbeat evens. Your thoughts drift. The sound wraps around you like wool, softened by years of use. It's easy to imagine the hall as it must have been decades ago, travelers from ages past, sitting in these same chairs, wrapped in the same warmth, listening to different hands, coax different songs from different instruments. How many nights like this have unfolded within these walls? How many melodies have floated up to the beams overhead? How many weary souls found rest not just in a warm bed, but in a quiet song played for no other reason than to ease the heart? The flute answers these questions without words, drifting through your mind like a lull. After a while, minutes, or perhaps much longer, the melody gently the notes soften further, easing towards silence like waves settling into tide pools after the last light of day. The final note hangs in the air, trembling faintly, before dissolving completely into the quiet. No one applauds. This is not that kind of hall. Instead, several travelers release long, slow breaths. The soldier bows his head slightly. The herbalist opens her eyes and smiles. The merchant murmurs a soft, appreciative hum. The keeper stands and walks over to the musician with a fresh cup of warm cider. They offer it silently, and the musician accepts with a grateful nod, cupping the drink between both hands, steam rising like a continuation of the fading notes. The keeper glances toward the rest of the hall. Music, they say softly, reminds the walls why they stand. There is a murmur of agreement, not loud, but warm, like the settling of blankets around tired bodies. The travelers return to their seats, not to resume conversation or games, but simply to sit in the afterglow of sound that still lingers in the rafters. The hall seems to breathe a little deeper now, its warmth spreading more evenly, its shadows softening further. You lay on, but your own eyes growing heavy, your mind drifting to that borderland between thought and dream. The music has left an imprint, not energetic or rousing, but deeply calming, the kind that stays with you like the last light flickering from a dying fire. The night stretches on, gentle and unhurried, and the hall, filled with soft music and quiet hearts, seems content to hold space for all who rest within it. The ember glow of the fire has settled into its lit evening rhythm, no longer reaching upward in lively flickers, but resting low and warm, breathing in slow pulses. As the travelers relax into the calm that follows music and shared quiet, a faint rumble trembles through the air. Distant at first, a soft growl beneath the floorboards, then another, closer. Thunder. Several heads lift, gently not in alarm, but in acknowledgement. Storms are familiar companions to those who travel long roads. They come and go in their own time, ignoring human plans and preferences. Outside, the fog that greeted your arrival begins to thin, replaced by a deeper darkness pressing against the windows. A moment later, a flash of lightning illuminates the entire hall with a pale blue glow. The shadows stretch tall and still, then fall back into warmth as quickly as they appeared. Rain follows soon after. At first it comes as a soft pattering like fingertips drumming gently along the thatched roof. The sound is soothing, the kind of slow rhythm that could lull even an uneasy mind. But as minutes pass, the storm finds its full voice. Rain begins to pour in steady sheets, striking the roof with soft, rolling intensity. The wind rises, whistling through gaps in the wooden walls, brushing the shutters like a traveler asking for entry. The whole, though, remains unwavering. The fire holds its glow. The air stays warm, and the keeper, with the patience of an old tree weathering countless storms, moves to check each shutter. They do so without hurry, gently securing wooden latches that have likely held through far fiercer nights. Each click of a lock feels comforting, like a hand smoothing a blanket over sleeping shoulders. As the keeper moves, the travelers watch with quiet appreciation. There is a kind of unspoken trust between them, and understanding that this hall is more than walls and wood. It is a shelter shaped by time itself, strengthened by the storms it has endured. Another roll of thunder echoes across the rafters, not sharp, but long, deep, and resonant, like the low voice of a giant in a dream. The herbalist smiles softly, closing her eyes, as if the sound comforts her. The merchant shifts in his seat, adjusting his cloak but showing no hint of unease. The soldier remains still, watching the rain slide down the nearest window in shimmering trails. "It will pass," the keeper says softly as they return to their place by the fire. "It always does." The storm seems to agree, its rhythm settling into something steady, loud enough to remind you of the world outside, yet far enough away to feel dreamlike, softened by the thick walls of the hall. The rain becomes a backdrop, a natural lullaby that wraps itself around the building. You allow yourself to sink further into your seat, letting the warmth of the fire seep into your legs. The storm's presence deepens the sense of safety within the hall. There is a beauty to each contrast between the fierce, untamed world outside and the gentle refuge cocooning you. It reminds you of a childhood night spent listening to storms from inside a warm room. The memory rises unbidden, the way lightning would flash through your windows, the scent of rain drifting through cracks, the comfort of knowing you were shielded and safe. Others seem to share the feeling. The pilgrims have drawn their cloaks around themselves, settling shoulder to shoulder on their bench. They whisper softly, their voices carrying a tone of wonder rather than worry. The older women paused their needlework, letting the storm's cadence guide their breath. Even the quiet man in the shadowed corner shifts slightly forward, perhaps listening more intently. The storm changes once more, taking on a wild edge. For a brief moment, a gust of wind pushes hard against the walls, making the lanterns sway and shadows ripple. The rain rises in intensity, drumming insistently on the roof. A branch outside scrapes across the side of the hall with a long, groaning sound. The keeper stands again, but only to stir the pot at the hearth. Their movements remain calm, unhurried. They give the simmering mixture a slow swirl, then replace the lid with a soft clink. When they speak, their voice carries easily through the hall, steady enough to counter the storm's energy. "Let the night rage," they murmur. "It cannot follow you in here." Something in those words, not loud, not dramatic, soothes the room like a balm. Shoulders relax, fingers unclench, breaths deepen. The storm, sensing it cannot unsettle those within the hall, begins to shift back toward gentleness. The harsh drumming turns to softer rain once again. The winds howl, easing into a distant hum. The music of the storm becomes hypnotic. Rain on the roof, wind against wood, thunder rolling softly across the dark hills. It blends perfectly with the crackle of the fire, as though the whole were conducting a natural orchestra, each sound harmonizing with the next, weaving a lullaby stitched from night and warmth. One of the older women begins humming again, barely audible. The herbalist opens a small jar of dried lavender, letting the scent drift through the air, mixing with the earthy aroma of the simmering pot. The faint floral fragrance floats gently, calming, grounding. Eventually, the soldier shifts his posture, leaning forward slightly, as if drawn to the window. He watches the rain, his expression soft. Perhaps storms remind him of long nights on distant battlefields, or perhaps they soothe him with their clean, powerful honesty. Whatever the reason, there is a quiet peace in the way he observes the shifting sky. The merchant rests his chin in his hand, eyes half closed, lulled by the rhythm of the rain. He draws a small notebook from his pocket, making a few slow marks perhaps, noting the weather or thoughts stirred by the music earlier. He is a man who carries stories carefully, and storms have a way of whispering new ones. Then, in a gentle, reflective tone, the keeper speaks again, addressing no one in particular. "Storms remind us that the world still moves even when we rest." The travelers absorb the words, each in their own way. Some nod, some close their eyes, some simply listen. Outside, another flicker of lightning turns the windows pale for a heartbeat. Then darkness returns, softer than before. The thunder rolls again, but now it feels far away, more like the memory of a storm than the storm itself. Inside, the stillness deepens. A calm descends that feels heavier than silence, yet lighter than sleep. The hall envelops you in warmth, in serenity, in the gentle truth that the world outside can roar as loudly as it wants. But here, within these walls, you are untouchable. You take a slow breath, tasting the faint sweetness of cider in the air. The night stretches long and safe ahead. The storm sings its lullaby, and the Wayfarer's hall holds steady, watching over all who call it refuge beneath the rain. The storm outside eventually softens into a steady, distant whisper rain, falling in long, even strokes, wind sighing rather than pushing, thunder rumbling like a giant turning in sleep. Within the Wayfarer's hall, the warmth deepens, as though the fire and walls have joined forces to create a sanctuary sealed gently against the restless world beyond. Most travelers have settled into their own quiet rhythms now. Some lean back with half-closed eyes. Others rest their heads on folded arms. A few sip the last of their warm cider in slow, savoring sips. Yet there is a kind of wakefulness in the air, one that belongs to late hours when the world is hushed but the mind drifts open, softened by fatigue and comfort. Midnight is not a time for loud stories or heated talk. It is a time for gentle confessions, soft recollections, and the thoughts one only dares to share when the night feels protective rather than dark. The first voice comes from the merchant. He sits closest to the fire again, rotating a small coin between his fingers. The firelight glints off the metal's worn edges as he considers it, then finally speaks, his voice quiet enough that it feels like he is speaking only to the flames. "It's strange," he murmurs, "how many roads a single coin can travel before it ends up in your hand." It is not a question, not a statement directed at anyone, just a thought spoken aloud, the way someone might speak to themselves while drifting between wakefulness and dream. The soldier lifts his eyes, watching the merchant with a gentleness that surprises you. "What roads?" he asked softly, not to pry, but to invite. The merchant turns the coin once more, before letting it rest in his palm. He doesn't look up as he answers. "This one passed from a spice caravan to a dock worker, then to a widow buying winter wool, then to a boy who lost it in the mud behind a market stall." He smiles, faintly. "I bought it from a man who found it many years later, buried beneath a tree root." He lifts the coin between finger and thumb, studying it again. "So many hands," he whispers. "So many stories." He sighs softly, expression wistful. "And yet, I don't know the name of a single one of them." The soldier looks into the fire, eyes reflecting the glow. His voice drifts out like warm smoke. "Sometimes we're not meant to know," he says. "Sometimes it's enough to be part of the chain." Something in his tone suggests he speaks of more than coins. The merchant seems to sense this too. He inclines his head with quiet understanding. Across the room, the herbalist shifts in her seat. She has taken out one of her small jars, this one filled with dried petals, the color of honey and sunset. She rolls the jar between her palms, warming it, then uncorks it gently. A faint floral aroma rises, weaving through the air like a soft ribbon. She closes her eyes, inhales, and lets out a long, slow breath. "That scent," she says softly, "is from a flower that only grows where the river bends northwest, just before the mountains rise." Her voice is low, dreamy, touched with memory. "I haven't visited the place for many seasons," she continues, "but sometimes, when I open this jar, I feel as though I'm there again, kneeling in the grass at dawn, my hands damp with morning dew." The pilgrims listen with wide, soft eyes. Even the older women who had been mending cloth pause to hear her. "What does it do?" one of them asks gently. The herbalist smiles a tired, tender smile. "It reminds you," she murmurs, "that beauty persists, even in places you may never return to." Silence follows, not empty silence, but full, like a cup brimming with warm tea. The keeper, who has been sitting quietly with their ledger closed beside them, looks around the hall with a gaze that feels like candlelit soft, steady, illuminating without burning. "We carry so many memories," they say. "Some we share, some we hide, and some we don't realize we still hold until the night grows quiet enough to hear them." The soldier shifts, his hand brushing the wooden star-shaped token he always tucks into his cloak. The keeper notices, of course, they do, and toots their head slightly. A silent question. The soldier hesitates. Then, slowly, he opens his hand. The small wooden star rests in his palm, its surface worn smooth from years of handling. "My daughter carved this," he says, voice nearly a whisper, "before I left home, many years ago." He swallows, the movement subtle but heavy. She would be grown now. Her breath catches, barely, but enough for every listener to hear. I don't know if she remembers me, or if she thinks of me at all. The hall does not react with pity only, with softness. The pilgrims exchange a glance filled with quiet empathy. The herbalist lowers her eyes respectfully. The merchant lets his own coin rest on the table. The keeper's voice is steady, warm, grounding. "Children remember more than we think," they say softly. "Not always the details, not always the days, but the shape of a presence. That stalls." The soldier closes his hand gently around the star again, his fingers trembling just slightly. Relief doesn't wash over him, not fully, but some small weight seems to shift, if only by a fraction. The man in the shadows speaks next. His voice is low, deeper than you expected, Ed, filled with a surprising calm. "I have walked many roads, assoys simply, but none have felt as kind as this one." He looks around the hall, his hood falling back slightly. His eyes reflect the ember glow like polished river stones. "I used to think rest was something earned," he continues, "something you reached after enough miles or enough hardship." His gaze softens. "But tonight reminds me, rest is sometimes given." No one responds at first, because the truth of his words settles into the air with the same weight as falling snow. Finally, the keeper nods. "Rest," they say gently, "is not a prize. It is a need, and needs are meant to be met." The soldier bows his head. The merchant exhales. The herbalist smiles faintly. The pilgrims lean closer together. The older women pause their stitching to rest their hands. Even you feel the words sink deep, loosening something you didn't realize had tightened. The storm outside begins to fade, its final raindrops tapping lightly on the roof like fingertips on a drum. The thunder rolls into the distance, softer and farther away. Inside, the midnight conversations ebb into quiet again, not abrupt, not awkward. Just a natural settling of voices when the heart has said what it needed to say. The fire dims, the hole exhales, and the keeper stands once more, moving toward the stairs leading to the loft. "It is late," they say softly, "and the night grows gentle." They gesture upward. "When you are ready, there is a place to rest. No rush, no command, just an invitation." You feel your body grow heavier with each heartbeat. The warmth, the stories, the storm, the music, the food, they've all layered together into something thick and soothing. You will climb the stairs soon. But for now, one last peaceful breath in the quiet of the hall. The keeper's gentle invitation lingers in the air like the fading warmth of a lantern-esque glow. One by one, the travelers begin to shift, rising slowly from their chairs, as though the very weight of the night has softened their bones. No one ruses, no one speaks loudly. Every movement is wrapped in the same hushed wonder that fills the hall. You watch as the soldier stands first, carefully tucking the wooden star back into his cloak. He moves with quiet reverence, as though ascending to sleep, who as sacred an act as prayer. The merchant follows, stretching his back with a soft groan, coins tucked neatly away, his ledger closed for the night. The herbalist cradles her satchel gently, as though her herbs might drift into dreams with her. The pilgrims rise hand in hand, smiling at the older women who give them a soft nod of good night. Soon, the hall's floorboards grow quiet. The fire dims even further, the embers settling like glowing coals beneath a blanket of ash. The keeper steps toward a lantern near the stairs and turns the wick down just a little, not enough to darken the hall completely, but enough to wrap it in the tender half-light meant for rest. When your legs finally move, you feel the gradual heaviness of sleep pulling you upward, guiding you toward the staircase. The keeper stands beside the base of the stairs, offering a steady presence rather than an instruction. The loft is warm, they say softly. And the mattresses have been fluffed. You'll rest well. You nod, offering a quiet smile. The keeper nods back, as if acknowledging something deeper than words of shared understanding. A silent gratitude. The staircase is old but sturdy, each step worn down just slightly at the center from years of travelers climbing it at the end of long days. Your hand glides along the smooth wooden railing, feeling the grooves left by countless palms before yours. The wood holds a kind warmth, faint but comforting, as though it remembers everyone it has supported. Your footsteps fall gently on the plank soft creaks, little sighs, the sound of tired limbs finding their way toward rest. Halfway up, you pause. Not because you need to, but because the moment feels worthy of taking in slowly. Looking back down, the view is almost dreamlike. The embers glowing on the hearth, the keeper moving with slow precision to cover the pot for the night, shadows embracing the tables and chairs in soft darkness. The whole feels smaller from this height, more intimate, gathered like a handful of quiet stories cupped gently in the hands of time. Turning upward again, you climb the remaining steps and step into the loft. It is a wide, open space tucked beneath the sloping roof-low beams overhead, thick wooden supports, and soft lanterns placed in safe corners. The air is warm, tinged with the scent of straw, wool blankets and faint lavender drifting from a nearby bundle hung to dry. The rafters creak occasionally, like old bones settling comfortably for the night. Rows of simple beds lined the space, each covered with a thick woolen blanket and a small pillow filled with feathers or straw. Some beds are already occupied. The soldier sits on the edge of his, rubbing his tired hands before pulling off his boots. The merchant is arranging his belongings neatly at the foot of his mattress. The herbalist has already curled beneath a blanket, her braids spilling across the pillow like threads of dark silk. The pilgrims whisper prayers or blessings before lying down side by side. The atmosphere is not one of strangers sharing a room. It is one of quiet companionship of people who have walked enough miles to understand that sleep is a gift, not to be squandered with noise or worry. You choose an empty bed near the far wall. Its wooden frame creaks gently as you sit, the mattress yielding with a soft sigh beneath your weight. The fabric of the blanket is coarse, but its warmth is immediate, wrapping around you, as though welcoming you into the fold of countless slumbering travelers before you. You lift your legs under the blanket and lie back slowly, feeling the day slip away inch by inch. The pillow cradles your head, not perfectly, but enough to ease the tension in your neck. Your breathing begins to fall into the same slow rhythm as the rain outside. Above you, the rafters create a lattice of shadow and light. The lanterns flicker faintly, their flames swaying in gentle arcs that cast glowing patterns across the ceiling. The wind sighs against the roof, whispering through the thatching like a lullaby tangled with the night. You listen to the quiet breathing of the fellow travelers, to the soft rustle of blankets, to the floorboards settling under shifting weight, to the storm's fading rhythm, to your own heartbeat slowing, softening, sinking with the night. For a moment, sleep hovers close warm, inviting but not yet ready to claim you fully. Your mind drifts, instead, wandering gently, brushing against the events of the evening, like a hand moving lightly over tall grass. The music, the meal, the conversations, the storm, the warmth. The keeper's steady presence. Each memory floats like a small light through your mind, gently illuminating a piece of your heart. The whole, with all its quiet magic, feels like a place that collects these small lights and stores them in its walls. The keeper enters the loft after a moment, carrying a dim lantern. Their footsteps are soft, confident, guiding them down the narrow aisle between the beds. They pause, occasionally tucking in a blanket, adjusting a pillow, offering a reassuring nod to a traveler whose eyes open briefly. When they reach your bed, they lean down slightly and speak in the lowest whisper. If the night becomes too loud, they say, referring to the storm's lingering rumble, there are extra blankets near the stairs. Warmth helps quiet the mind. You thank them with a quiet nod, and they smile a soft, warm curve of the lips that seems to dim the lantern's glow in comparison. Before leaving, the keeper moves to a small window at the far end of the loft and adjusts the wooden shutter. A sliver of cool night air drifts in clean, fresh, carrying the faint scent of wet leaves and distant rain. Just enough to soothe, not enough to chill. Then they descend the stairs again, leaving the loft bathed in flickering lantern light and the soft chorus of resting souls. Your eyes begin to drift closed for longer stretches now. Your breaths deepen, your body grows heavier. You feel wrapped not just in blankets, but in the shared peace of everyone around you. The loft becomes a cradle. The hall becomes a guardian. The night becomes a gentle tide pulling you towards sleep. And somewhere far below, you hear the keeper humming a tune you recognize from earlier. Carried up through the floorboards as softly as breath, the melody settles over the loft like a blessing. Slow, warm, full of promise. The world narrows to the glow of the lantern and the warmth around you, and you feel yourself begin to drift, finally, into the deep rest the road has long owed you. The loft holds its quiet like a cupped hand, careful not to disturb those who have surrendered at last to rest. Lantern light lowers itself in slow, gentle breaths, swaying faintly whenever the wind sighs along the roof. Outside, the storm has nearly faded. Only a soft drizzle remains, tapping gently at the shingles, a lullaby of raindrops that coax even the most wakeful mind towards stillness. You lie on your back, beneath the warm woolen blanket, listening to the room breathe. Travelers shift softly in their sleep, one turning over with a creak of the bed frame, another releasing a quiet sigh. A pair of slow, synchronized breaths comes from the pilgrims at the far end of the loft. The soldier murmurs something unintelligible in a dream, then settles again. The herbalist's braided hair spreads across her pillow like a dark river. She does not stir at all. This shared restfulness feels deeper than ordinary sleep. It feels old, woven into the very fabric of the loft. It is as though the rafters above have gathered countless dreams over the years and now exhale them gently into the air, inviting every traveler to drift among them. You shift slightly, sinking into the mattress. It is lumpy here and there, but that only makes it feel more human, more honest. It holds the shape of those who came before you. 100 nights, 1,000 nights, perhaps more, all layered one upon another. A connection forms between you and the wooden beams overhead, the floor beneath, the very walls that cradle you. You get the distinct feeling that the hall remembers. The drift towards sleep grows stronger. Your thoughts move slowly, as though wading through warm, shallow water. You dainty fall into dreams. Immediately first you hover in that soft gray space between waking and dreaming, where memories merge with imagination. You see the lantern outside, glowing through fog. You see the pot simmering over the hearth, bubbling like a quiet heartbeat. You see the keeper's gentle eyes and the way they close the shutters against the storm. You hear the faint echo of the flute's melody drifting upward, caught in the grain of the floorboards. These images blend together in a soft, anonymous haze, not sharp enough to grasp, not distant enough to fade. The loft around you begins to shift in your perceptions, not physically, but in the way dream thoughts transform familiar shapes. The beams overhead look like the ribs of an ancient beast, warm and protective. The flickering lantern glow becomes fireflies drifting lazily through the air. The soft rustle of blankets sounds like faraway waves. The hall is no longer a building. It is a living thing, a guardian, a witness, a keeper in its own right. You wonder, in a drifting way, how many stories these wooden walls have absorbed. How many travelers have lain in this very bed, staring at these same beams, listening to rain tap this same roof? How many whispered secrets were shared in the darkness between strangers who felt safe for the first time in months? How many lonely hearts found peace here? How many weary minds drifted into dreams to the soft hum of the keeper's voice? A faint sound draws your attention, barely audible, but distinctly there. A soft creak, followed by the quiet shift of weight on the floorboards below. You realize the keeper is still awake downstairs, tending to the final tasks of the night. For a moment, the faint scrape of wood on stone suggests they are adjusting the logs in the hearth, preparing the fire to burn low through the long hours before dawn. Then the sound of a cloth being hung to dry. Then silence. Then the soft hum of a tune, so quiet it seems meant only for the hall itself. It rises through the floorboards in threads of melody, wrapping itself around the rafters, the beams, the beds. It is the same melody the musician played earlier, but gentler, almost like a memory of that song instead of the song itself. Hearing it, your eyelids grow heavier, your breath deepens, your thoughts fade into the soft swirl of dreams. You drift. At first, your dreams feel like extensions of the day-foggy roads, warm firelight, the smell of herbs and bread, but then they soften, turning into something quieter, more ancient. You dream of walking through a forest where the trees hum gently like the rafters of the Holland. Lanterns appear one by one along a winding path, guiding you forward. You feel the cool fog on your skin, then the warm embrace of light at your back, leading you homeward. The dreams deepen. Now you stand in a field of tall grass that sways without wind, each blade glowing faintly as though holding tiny embers. The air is warm, thick with a sense of belonging. Somewhere far off, you hear the rhythmic bubbling of a pot, the familiar melody floating through the grass, encouraging you onward. In the dream, the hall is everywhere. In the beams, in the earth, in the breeze, in your bones. You understand something then, something simple, yet profound. Shelter is not a place. It is a feeling, and tonight, you are held within it completely. Time becomes soft, undefined. You drift through memories that were never yours, echoes of laughter beneath these beams, of quiet talks beside the fire, of storms weathered together. Each image floats within you like a lantern bobbing along a still lake. Somewhere, you sense the keeper climbing the stairs. Your dreaming self watches from a distance as the faint glow of their lantern fills the loft with a soft halo. They move through the room quietly, checking on each traveler, tucking in a blanket, adjusting a pillow, lingering for a moment beside the soldier, whose hand still rests near his wooden star. When they reach your bed, you feel both in dream and in waking their presence like a warm light settling over you. They do not touch you. They do not speak. They simply watch for a moment, ensuring your breathing is steady, your rest unbroken. In that moment, the whole feels like a sanctuary carved out of time, itself untouched by the sharpness of the world, unhurried by its demands. The keeper leaves their lantern in a safe corner to give the room a gentler glow, then descends the stairs once more. Their footsteps fade. You sink deeper into dream. Your thoughts become softer still. Voices from earlier drift past. Featherlight. Laughter. Music. Stories shared at midnight. The crackling of the fire. And the hall's walls seem to hum, not with words, but with the quiet gratitude of a place that has sheltered countless hearts. You are part of its memory now. Part of its warmth, part of its story. Your breath becomes slow and even. Your body becomes weightless. The world falls away, replaced only by peaceful darkness. You sleep deeply, fully, safely. Dreams curl inside the wooden walls, whispered into existence by the night itself, and the Wayfarer's hall stands guard over them all. Morning arrives quietly. There is no dramatic change, no sudden burst of sunlight. Instead, the light comes in slowly, almost cautiously, slipping between the shutters in thin gray lines. The air is cool, but not cold. The storm from the night before has left behind a damp freshness that you can smell even before you open your eyes. For a few seconds, you lie still, not fully awake but no longer asleep either. The loft is calm. Travelers who were restless earlier in the evening are now steady and peaceful. Someone shifts gently in their sleep. Another lets out a long breath. The wooden beams above look familiar now, like something you've seen many times rather than just once. Eventually you sit up, blanket sliding away from your shoulders. Your body feels different, looser, rested, a little heavy, but in a good way. The mattress may not be luxurious, but it supported you better than you expected. Sleep came easily here. Across the loft, others begin to stir. The soldier rubs the sleep from his eyes, checking his token out of habit. The merchant stretches slowly, wincing a little at stiff joints. The herbalist pulls on her boots with practiced motions, her satchel already organized beside her. The pilgrims whisper a short morning prayer. Even the quiet man who kept Mosley to himself takes a moment before standing, as though testing the ground beneath his feet. A faint creak sounds from below, floorboards shifting as someone moves across the hall. It is, followed by the soft clink of a pot being uncovered and the steady scrape of a ladle. The scent of warm broth rises through the floorboards, mild but comforting. The keeper is already awake. You gather your belongings, fold the blanket back over the bed, and make your way toward the stairs. Each step feels steady and familiar now. The kind of familiarity that forms after only a single night in a place that feels safe. Downstairs, the hall looks different than it did last night. Morning light is soft in the shadows. The fire has been rebuilt into a small, contained flame. The lanterns have been turned down. Water drips from the roof outside, falling in slow, rhythmic taps. Everything is quieter, but not in a tired way more, like the building is resetting itself for the day. The keeper stands near the hearth, stirring something lighter than the stew from yesterday. They look up as you approach and offer a small, easy smile. "Morning," they say. "How did you sleep?" You answer honestly. "Well, better than you expected after such a long journey." The keeper nods, satisfied. "Good. There's a simple breakfast. Nothing heavy. Bread, broth, and a bit of fruit if you want it." The meal is exactly as promised, plain but warm. Everyone eats quietly, not out of shyness, but because mornings tend to draw people inward. The storm is gone, but its memory lingers in the damp wood and faint mist outside. The merchant is the first to speak, mostly to himself. "Clear skies," he says, glancing at the window. "Good for travel." The soldier stands after finishing his meal, adjusting his cloak before heading toward the door. He stops beside the keeper, long enough to say a quiet thank you. The keeper touches his arm gently, a simple gesture of acknowledgement. The herbalist takes a little longer, carefully securing the jars and bundles in her satchel. She exchanges a few words with the keeper, something about a particular herb that grows not far from here, something she may go look for if the road allows. The pilgrims leave together, smiles on their faces, their footsteps light on the floorboards. The older women gather their sewing before departing, one offering a small loaf of bread to the keeper as a gesture of gratitude. One by one, travelers step back into the world. When your turn comes, you move toward the door with your pack over your shoulder. You pause for a moment, not because you're hesitant to leave, but because the transition from the hall's warmth to the cool morning air feels significant. You want to take it in properly. The keeper joins you, opening the door slowly. Outside, the road stretches ahead, damp but clear, bordered by trees still dripping from last night's storm. The fog has lifted. The sky is pale and steady. "You'll have good travel today," the keeper says. "The storm took what it needed, and now the air's settled." You nod, taking in their calm certainty. They continue. "You're welcome here if you ever pass this way again." The hall remembers its travelers. It's a simple sentence, but it carries weight. It feels honest, not sentimental. You know, they mean it. You step outside. The air is cool against your face. Somewhere in the trees, birds begin calling out, testing their voices after the storm. The road feels different now, as though the night spent in shelter has straightened its edges and softened its distance. You turn back once more. The keeper stands in the doorway, one hand resting lightly on the frame, not waving, just present, as steady as the hole itself. "Safe travels," they say. "Thank you," you reply. With that, the keeper closes the door, gently, not shutting you out, but returning the hall to the quiet rhythm of its morning. The lantern sways slightly outside. Catching the fresh light of dawn, you begin to walk. Your steps feel sure. Your mind feels rested. Your heart feels lighter than it did the night before. Behind you, the Wayfarer's hull stands sturdy and calm, ready for the next weary traveler who will one day follow the same road and find themselves drawn toward the same lantern glow. And as you move forward, the last traces of sleep slip from your body, replaced by something steady and grounded. A sense of beginning, a sense of clarity, a quiet readiness for the day ahead. The hull remains behind you, but the rest. It gave you walks with you, mile after mile, long after the building disappears from sight. Thank you for spending another quiet night here at Sleep-inducing. I hope this small journey through the Wayfarer's Hall brought you a sense of warmth, calm, and safe rest. If you enjoyed this gentle walk through history, feel free to subscribe, leave a comforting comment, or share the video with someone who could use a peaceful night. The spoken story ends here, but the soft, relaxing music will continue, giving you all the time you need to fall into deep, restful sleep. Good night, dear traveler, and may your road tomorrow be light and steady.